Okay, so in the last part, we had done our UVs of three low poly meshes, and now in this part, we are going to do the baking. So now to start with the baking, first I don't need these two. I'm gonna bake the manually retopod mesh first. So keeping things in the center. Just to bring things to the center, press Alt G and they will come in the center of the world origin. So I have my eyes separate as you can see over here. So I also have a shortcut Alt F for um, the align tool. You can enable the align tool in the preferences in add-on section, and I have assigned the shortcut as Alt F. So what it does, it uh, tries to copy the location and position of the selected mesh. So as you might know that Blender works on the basis of selected to active. So this is the mesh which is selected and this is the active mesh. So it will copy the location of the active mesh onto the selected mesh. So this is my low poly mesh and this is my high poly. So for this you have to have the origin and rotation similar to the high poly. So since they are having the same rotation and location origin, sorry, it will be easy. So simply select the first object, select the second object, press whatever shortcut you have, and it will snap to the position. Now it's always good to have your mesh separated for baking because if the meshes are not separate, you might find issues in the baked results. Now to start with the baking, I'm gonna create a new image texture which will be 4096 by 4096 and let's call it a baked and okay, so this is my low poly mesh and the pink one is my high poly. Now let's go in the render tab and choose cycles. So right now Blender has the baking options in the cycles only. So it works in only cycles. So in the cycles, go to the bake and in the bake here you can see the normals. So first we are going to bake the normals. Now it's always good to have another mesh just for baking purposes. So what I'm gonna do is let's select my low poly. These are two low polys of this thing, and I'm gonna duplicate it and I'm gonna combine this thing. So this is a different one. This is a different one. Okay, actually, let me just step back. This is going to be my final one. I'm gonna combine them at this position. Uh, Selected to active. So I'm gonna combine the eyes to the body. So this is my manual for baking, and this I'm gonna duplicate them and combine. Okay, again I did the same thing. So selected to active and now combine. So I have this head high underscore baking. So it's always good to have different meshes for baking purposes only. Now again the same thing. You have to use the selected to active. So the selected mesh is the low poly mesh selected to the active mesh, and the active mesh is going to be our high poly mesh. So selected to active, and for the margin, let's talk about the margin. So right now the margin is set to 16 pixels. Now uh, it's not necessary to have 16 pixels, uh, because if let's say these are the UVs, this is the kind of UV you have. So you might find that the 16 pixels is a lot of margin for this thing, because this might be about 8 on 8 or 10 pixels, let's consider. Or even if it is even way more closer, then it might be 2 pixels or 1 pixel. So depending on the distance you have between different UV islands, you have to consider your margin. So right now you can see I have lot of spaces in between different UVs, UV island. So I can bake on 16 pixels. So for baking now, so this is my test bake, and to actually bake the mesh, I have this high poly ready over here. I don't need this. And this is my low poly material, the test material. This is the baked 2 by 2048 by 2048 black color. And now to bake these things, I'm gonna select the high poly first. Selected, as we know that we have to go for selected to active. So selected to the active, and I've already set my ray distance. So ray distance is you can consider it like if this is your high poly surface and this is your low poly surface, so the ray will be casted, and this distance like 0.5 meter, this will decide how much the rays will penetrate. So you can consider it like that. Now now let's start baking. So I have set the ray distance to 0.5 meters, and the margin is set to 5 pixels. Now let's hit bake, and I'm gonna stop the stream now. So my baking is complete, and you can see this is my baking. So these are my ears, my face, the chest area. Okay, the chest area is over here. The chest area, the shoulder area, the backside of the shoulder, and the base of the mesh. Now let's check the low poly mesh. Now since now first let's save our image. So save as, okay, I'm gonna compression. Let's be compression manual. I mean manual underscore baked underscore 001 saved as a PNG. And I'm gonna okay. Let's use this thing as my normals only. So this will go into the color. Let's go to the material view and strength 1. Now, as you may attach the image, and you may find these kind of issues going around your mesh. Now, this is a simple issue, very simple issue. What you have to do is simply switch the color space from sRGB to no color, and this is our baked result. Now, since this is our mesh for baking only, now let's check our manual mesh. This is my manual mesh. So these are my eyes, this is my face, and as you can see, this is quite good. The result is quite good. So now let's jump on to the next baking. So now I don't need this baking mesh. I'm gonna delete that. I have my manual mesh. Let's keep it aside. Now let's take the automatically retopod mesh, and since same material is applied, I'm gonna just press this test and remove this image. Add an image texture. Oops. Okay. New 2048 2048. Okay. Added an image, and now I don't need this mesh for baking. I will use this mesh for baking, and I'm gonna duplicate this thing, hide these two meshes. Again, depending on what kind of mesh you have, you might have to create different versions for baking. So as you can see that I have not created any eyes over here. So it would be better for me if I bake the eyes in the same mesh. So I'm gonna combine these things, and Alt G. Now I have a image over here. Let's go to the image bake underscore 02. Go to the render section, and okay, let's check the UVs. Since I have these two islands pretty close, so the 5 pixels which I did already uh, would be a preferable choice for me in this case also. Always check your UVs, how much close the islands are, and depending on that, you can choose the margin. So now again, selected the high polymer, selected to the low poly. Now press bake. So actually I skipped the whole part of baking. So the same way we did the baking for our manual mesh, I did the same thing for the automatically retopolized and for the decimated mesh. I did the same process, added an image, connected to the normal, set it to no non-color after baking, the same thing. Now let's check the quality. So these are the three low poly meshes which we had, and this is the quality which we have achieved. So as you can see, this is quite good. This is my decimated mesh. This is my automatically retopologized mesh, and this is my manually retopologized mesh. Now, the material setup is quite easy for this thing. I just copied the material which I had in my high poly and pasted in the other materials of the low poly and simply attached the big normals with the normal map input to the main BSDF node. Now these are the three results. The main thing to notice is that always try to follow as this is the decimated mesh. We didn't had much control in this one, but still if you can see, we have the shape of the face over here. We have the shape of the nose. So it whether you are going for this type of mesh, totally automatically decimated mesh, whether you are going for this type of mesh or whether you are going for a total automatic process or even for the manual thing, always try to find the highlight points. Like you can see the highlighted points like over here at the this bone, over here at the lips, the nose, the eyes, the eyebrows. So these are the points which you have to take care of and consider them while modeling the low poly versions. So these are the three versions, and I'm gonna now jump in my another file where I have the material and lighting setup for these things. So this is my final presentation where I have the lighting setup and the material setup. So this is my high poly version, and as you can see, it has quite a lot of details. And then comes my automatically retopologized mesh, which is also quite good since it has a lot of polys, like it has 22,000 up polys. So it has maintained the shape very well, and also the baking is quite good. And this is my decimated mesh. So this is not the exact decimated mesh because I made this file earlier before starting the tutorial. So, but still you can see the shape of the head, shape of the ear, quite good. And the only thing which I don't like are these antennas, but still, from this from a game asset point of view, I guess this will do. And then comes my manually retopologized mesh. So again, this is also a different version of the manually made mesh, but it has the same concepts which we discussed in the previous parts. And as you can see, it has also a decent amount of polish to hold up the shape. So let's quickly check the material setup. So for the materials are quite simple as I have these materials from Quixel from the Quixel Bridge software. It's free, and these are the PBR texture from the Quixel Bridge, and this is my baked normals. Now to check the node, this is my diffuse. I have simply used a hue saturation to shift the color a bit. I have used the ambient occlusion as my specular, and roughness goes in the roughness. And now starting with the texture coordinate node, I have for these for these PBR textures from the Quixel, uh, I am using the generated UVs which Blender already automatically generates as a vector node for these textures. Now, why I did that? Because if I don't do that, and let me just go back to the flat and change this thing to UV. So you will start seeing seams all around. Like like here you can find a seam. This is the shoulder area. Here you will find the seam. Wherever there are seams, you will start seeing the seams because it is using the UV coordinates to use this texture on top of that. So rather than using the UV coordinate, you will be using generated for getting better results. Again, but because we are using generated, we cannot use the flat option over here, or you might get some this kind of stretching issues. So what you have to do is simply switch to box. Now, even in the box, when you switch from flat to box, you might find the seams are visible, and there are quite a lot of seams than the previous one. So what you need to do now is simply increase this blend. So you can see how it is blending. So what you need to do is simply increase this blend. So I'm gonna keep it at zero point 0.5. Please remember that whatever the blend option, the blend strength you are keeping over here, you have to keep the same blend strength in other textures as well, so that they all hold up in the same place. So this is my albedo, which is going through a hue saturation value to the base color. My ambient occlusion as my specular, my roughness as the roughness. For the normals, now for the normals, you can see if I directly use the textures normal, you may not find quite good result because we don't have our baked result on top of that. So what you need to do is add a overlay node and connect this to the normal map. Connect your textures, already made textures in the color 1 input, and use your baked normals in the second input. So this is the base layer and this is the above layer. So the above layer is getting overlaid on top of the base. So you can try different methods, but I find overlay and soft light being the very useful of all. So it is just a mix node. So if you press Shift A, mix mix RGB, and you can find the overlay. Oops. So you can find the overlay, connect the base to the base, and for the factor I am using the one factor. So you can test with different factor results, but one is good for me. And so this is the material setup. This is quite easy material setup. I have also done a bit of subsurface so that it looks cool. So you can see a bit of subsurface happening over here. So since it is going to be an alien creature, so I have pumped up the subsurface a bit. And for the color, I have picked orange, light orange kind of color. And the rest of the things are very simple as well. Now, for the lighting, what I have done is the lighting is also quite easy. So what I have done over here is I have added these spotlights. So I have added these spotlights. So I'm following the three-point lighting technique over here. So I have my key light over here. This is my key light, as you can see. So it is quite bright. The power is 500 watts. This is my key light. And then comes my fill light, which is this. I have used a bluish or purplish color just to pump up things a bit and make things look interesting. And I have two backlights. So I have used two sunlights as my backlight. You can use area light or spotlights as well, but I use the sun in this case. So if I just disable this, you can see the result. So the sun is giving me a really good highlight on the edges of the creature, as you can see. So I have two of those lights. So one pointing in that direction. So as you can see, these are the two lights. So one pointing in this direction and one pointing in this direction. So this is giving me a quite good outline from wherever angle I try to see. So this is my backlight. This is working as my backlight. And these are the two key and fill lights I have. And additionally, let me just disable this thing. Additionally, what I have, these two small point lights. So the point light power is very low, as you can see. So this point light is just to create a bit of drama in the lighting. As you can see over here, it is a bit of greenish color. So it is not very prominent, but you may find a bit of green tint over here and here. So as you can see over here. So this is just to add little bit of different cherry on the cake. So this is my final lighting, and let me just quickly see the result. So this is my, so I have also set the camera. So this is my high poly. I have animated the meshes a bit. My high poly, my automatically generated mesh, my decimated mesh, and my final manually retopod mesh. Now, final quote on this thing. Always try to use the manual method. It gives you a better result and better control over what you are doing. You can define the shapes very well, but if you have time constraints on your project, you can try different methods, which we did, like the automatic method or the decimated method. So you can go for anything, but manual has worked for me in this case. So I will stick to the manual one. So as my final output. Thank you for watching.